Hey guys, this is Matthew Avenger, and today we're doing another video. This one's a bit different than usual. Today I'm doing an interview for my history class. I'm interviewing my grandparents and possibly my mom about 9/11 and the 9/11 attacks and their experience, what happened with them, even though they weren't exactly in New York. I'm just basically making this intro so you're not massively confused as to why I'm doing this, and also kind of tell YouTube to not take this video down because it's kind of for an assignment. So, as always, thank you for watching. This is Matthew Avenger. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys at the end of the video. Okay, so we're here with the interview now. These are my grandparents, the first people I'm going to be interviewing. Introduce yourselves.
I'm Nita Gregg.
And I'm Dick Gregg.
And so we're just going to start out today by asking a few questions. And the first one is, how did you learn about 9/11? Was it news, someone telling you? How did you find out?
I got a call on the telephone. I was headed from the New York MCS shop going to Kentucky to a job site, and the office manager called me and he said, "Man, you won't believe this. We have just been bombed into the Twin Towers."
What about you?
I was with him, so it was the same thing. And then we turned on Fox News to listen to it.
You've already explained where you were. About what time was it? Was it early in the morning or was it later?
It was early morning. It was right at the time it happened. I forget exact time, but
Right after the second one hit
Yeah.
the towers is when we got the phone call.
What is your emotional reaction whenever you saw towers get hit, and do you still have the same reaction whenever you see footage of it?
We didn't see it until later that evening because we were traveling, but we listened on the radio, and it was just shock, kind of disbelief, and you know, this is the United States of America. Things don't happen like that here. And yes, you still get the same feeling now.
Where were your loved ones at the time that it happened, and what were your thoughts about them?
Well, we knew where they all were. They were all here in Batesville. So, actually, and Rich called us to find out where we were at because he didn't know exactly where we were. So,
Actually, this is a question, I don't think it's somewhere in this packet, but I know that you were in the military, and how do I word this? Did you think that you had to be called to go to war for any reason?
no, I'm at the age it would have to be a total world war before they would call me back. I mean, I would go. I would be ready to go if they needed me, but I would doubt they would call me at this age.
What do you think the government's reaction was to the terrorist attack?
yeah, I think the response, actually, the government's response to it afterwards or at that moment, when it first happened, I thought everybody rallied around government. Individuals, everybody rallied around it. I would think, as I would expect them to. There was support, just everybody supported everybody in everything they did at that time.
This is a follow-up question to the last one. How did the leaders of this country come together the following days after?
How did the what?
The leaders,
Of the
presidents,
country?
Congress.
They were all, they come around it. The president was right there on site immediately, and Congress, now they wouldn't do this probably, but they had prayer, you know.
They was ready to take care of the problem and then help the victims that was hurt, the ones that was in the accidents, and the families too. They was rallying around all of them.
I think at that particular time there was real unity within everybody. Government, there wasn't any focus on anything racial. There wasn't any focus like there is now. It wasn't divided. It was unity, and I was hoping that would stay. There was patriotism. There was people flocked to churches, and were praying and all that stuff. And I was just hoping that would be something that would last, but it didn't. But
Yeah, sadly it didn't. Do you believe the nation is safer today because of the security measures that were put in place because of what happened at 9/11? Why or why not?
Are we safer today than we were before that?
We was safer to a point at that particular time, because, like I said, everybody was focused on who did it. We'll take care of them immediately, and started the effort to do that. That was at that time. Now, would you safer today? I would say definitely not, because the administration that we've got, that we're under, does not take the terrorists serious. They just kind of blow them off. They talk to them, everything will be all right. I've heard several different comments from our president that he can talk them down. He don't need to take force. And what's going on today, we're going to have to take some heavier action, a lot more force, and a lot quicker, or we're going to be under continuous attacks as we have been up to this point.
What kind of bias or stereotypes of certain groups of people do you think resulted from the events at 9/11?
Focus or stereotypes?
Bias or
Bias. It was probably biased toward the Muslims then, because, you know, that was the country that seemed to be responsible for it.
Have you ever visited Ground Zero? If so, when did you visit? Or for what reason did you visit it? So we are here with part 2 of the interview. This time I'll be interviewing my parents. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Christy West.
Mark West. And so I'm basically just going to start off by asking a few questions. First one being, how did you learn about the events of 9/11? Was it through the news? Someone told you about it? Phone call? You go first because you heard about it first.
Okay. I was at work at White River Medical Center doing a 12-hour shift. I had helped some patients set up breakfast, turned the TV on. They were watching a news program, and breaking news came in and said that there had been a plane that hit one of the Twin Towers. So I immediately called Mark and asked him if he had the TV on to see what he had, to see what he thought.
And that was when I found out about it. I didn't know what had happened. I was working on my sermon, so I had the TV off, and was surprised when she called, because she didn't normally call that time of morning because she was normally busy. That I turned the TV on and saw what was going on the news. So that was how I found out about it, was from your mom.
So you've already explained where you were whenever it happened. What was your emotional reaction? Because I know that y'all saw the second one hit. What was your reaction whenever you saw it hit? And do you have that same feeling whenever you see footage nowadays?
Right. Well, of course, at first when I saw the news and the first plane was the only thing hit, I was just kind of, how would a plane have gotten off course and hit a tower like that? But like you said, we were watching the TV together when I saw that second plane come around and hit the tower, and I was in shock. And my immediate response to Mark was, "We're under attack." So, and yeah, I mean, that's just really played through my head for years and years and years, being able to see those towers being hit.
For me, my initial reaction was more just an overwhelming sense of loss, because I knew when that second plane hit that there were a lot of people that died when it hit. Just, because people are there that time of morning, they're doing their jobs, they're at their desk. Even with the other plane, whether they had even started any kind of evacuating or not, you didn't know any of that then. You just saw the hit and the explosion, and you knew that somebody was intentionally trying to kill Americans in those buildings. And that was the emotion I felt, was just this deep sense of loss when I saw that.
Where were your loved ones at the time that this happened, and what were your first thoughts about them?
Well, you were in the bouncy seat watching VeggieTales when I found out about it, so I didn't you know, and I was on the phone with your mom, so I knew where she was at and that she was okay. But I do know that it made for a very long day because I couldn't wait for your mom to get home. And we did, you know, when she got home, we shared a nice long hug because it was an emotionally just draining day, and it was just one of those days where you wanted to find the people you loved and just reconnect with them, and let them know that you were glad they were still around, because you knew that day, especially as the day went on, that there were so many families that weren't going to have that day. There were moms and dads and uncles and brothers and sons and daughters that weren't coming home that day, and that was the hardest part to come to grips with.
What do you think the government's reaction was to the terrorist attack?
Well, of course, I think the first thing they wanted to do is find out who was behind the attack, and I think in those days afterwards, I think there was a lot of unification with government. I think they came across from, you know, Democrats, Republicans, and all joined together with a common goal to find out who did it and, you know, take action.
I think there was some good and some bad. I love the way that the country came together and the politicians came together, because the day after, I can't remember if it was the day after, whenever Congress went back to meet the first time, they stood on the steps and sang, was it God Bless America or something? There was some song, they all stood together, you know, all the Republicans and Democrats and everybody, they stood together and sang that song, and it seemed like the nation had kind of, you know, there had been a very divisive election when George Bush got elected that just drug on. It drug on through you being born at the end of December. Just the debate over hanging chats and recounting the ballot and all this stuff, just a very divisive, you know, almost 50-50 election. This just really seemed to unite Americans again in a way that we hadn't been united. And then, you know, we were united in wanting to find out who did it and get the people that did it. But you know, and those were the good things, you know, trying to bring resolution to it. Some of the bad things, you know, some politicians took some advantage of the situation and passed some bills that kind of eroded some of our civil liberties after that, like the Patriot Act and other things. But just the unifying together was a really good thing that did happen after it. That was one of the good fruits that happened after it that our government was a part of.
How did the nation's leaders come together following the days of 9/11?
So I think you kind of answered that, and he answered that in the last.
Yeah, they just, like I said, they came back, they had their, you know, they all sang together on the steps, and they were all unified in going after Bin Laden, which was who they found had been behind it. They were unified in trying to track Bin Laden down, but they were also unified in several other pieces of legislation. Just, as I said, had some bad things in it as far as our civil liberties are concerned, but they were geared at trying to stop it from happening again. And that's, you know, that's something that you can try, and, you know, the government is trying to respond, and they're trying to make the American people feel safe and feel secure, which is why they did those things, but it was also, it was them trying to do their best to show America that they were trying to make it safe.
Do you believe the nation is safer today?
I'll let you answer first.
I would say yes and no. I think it made us more aware of our surroundings in other countries and what threats we could potentially be under. But are we any safer? I would say no, because you still see attacks, and we've been at constant war since 9/11.
I don't believe we're any safer, because I don't believe that you can really be any safer in a free society. As long as we're going to be a free society, people are going to have their choices to make. They're going to have their things that they're trying to do, and you can't stop all those things from happening in a free society. So we're not really any more safe than we were. Of course, the politicians want us to feel like we're safer, and that's why they put into place a lot of the things they did, where they, you know, claim to be chasing terrorism all over the world and all those things. But in a free society, it's hard to really be safer because people are free and people have their freedom. And as long as we're a society that respects that freedom, we're also going to have threats that are just going to be a natural part of being a free society.
Do you think there's any kind of bias or stereotypes that came as a cause of 9/11.
Yeah, there is. Especially dealing with Middle Eastern. I mean, since it was Middle Eastern men who carried out the attacks, I think there's been a huge stigma on labeling anyone that's from the Middle Eastern descent as being potential terrorists, and it's a disadvantage to them, especially the ones that are U.S. citizens that have been here their entire life. Know that they were, people were scared to be around them. They were treated less than following the days after 9/11.
I think it's more a regional thing. I think in areas where you already had a lot of Middle Eastern people and Muslims, they understood that this was just a small group of people that decided to do something. Places like our area where you don't run into as many Middle Eastern people, there was a lot more suspicion and a lot more of like a xenophobia, just because it is that different culture, and not being able to understand that culture because you've never been exposed to that culture. So I think the people that were more exposed to the culture before it happened were less xenophobic than areas of the country that hadn't been as exposed to that culture, where you find more of that xenophobic reaction to Muslims and to people from the Middle East.
Yeah, and I think because we had friends that were Middle Eastern, I think that helped with us, because I know personally I didn't have a fear of Middle Eastern descent people.
Have y'all ever visited Ground Zero? Would
No.
y'all ever like to?
Never have, but yes, I would like to.
Yeah, I haven't been there, but it would be an interesting visit.
It'd be somber and sad, but I think we need to be able to do it.
How did the events at 9/11 change your life?
Well, I think it just made me more aware of what was going on, in our world. Before then, I didn't really pay much attention to what was happening in our world. And since then, I've tried to be more knowledgeable and aware, and keeping up with the news as much as possible to see what was going on.
9/11 for me, as far as changing my life, it brought this realization that I was going to be raising my kids in a global world. The world I was raised in, things went on in the world, but they were always, you had oceans as a barrier between you and the rest of the world. And that was the first time that, I guess for me, I realized the world is coming to America. The world is coming to the United States. That things have global capacity, and I've realized that challenge trying to raise my children with an understanding that we're part of a global society. We're not just Arkansans, we're not just Americans, but we're part of this big global society, and everything can connect and reach anywhere in the world. And that awareness of just our global nature is how my life changed.
Well, thank you for allowing me to do this interview. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you guys for sticking through the entire video, even though this is not my usual video game content stuff, but thank you for watching anyway. This is Matt, the Emerald Avenger. Peace out.